Hello, everyone. Glad you could join us today. If you want to take advantage of dynamic PSIP at your station and save money at it as well, you're in the right place. Today, you'll find out about the difference between static and dynamic PSIP, the advantages of using the same hardware to both generate and inject dynamic PSIP, and some novel ways to do PSIP. We also have a short demo so you can see just how easy it is to add PSIP to your station. We're also going to finish with a question and answer session. So if you have any questions along the way, go ahead and enter them into the chat box and we'll answer those at the end. I'm Steve. I'm the president of D2D Technologies. I have with us here today Jess, and I also have Fallon with us as well. She'll be kind of working things behind the scenes. And hey, Jess, how you doing?
Great, Steve. Happy to be here. Happy to talk PSIP. How you doing?
Doing great.
Great.
So PSIP is be a very important part of your station, and probably a lot of you are already familiar with PSIP, but there may be some which not too familiar with how it what makes up PSIP. So I'll just do a quick overview of PSIP to get us started here. So there's two main types of PSIP. There's static PSIP and dynamic PSIP. Your static PSIP, as the name implies, is the PSIP which doesn't change, such as your major number, your minor number, your channel name. And the tables which make that up are your virtual channel table, which is the most important one for static PSIP. That is where you define your major number, your minor number, your channel name, is all that's defined within the virtual channel table. There's also the rating region table, the RRT, which that's where you get all your parental guide information, whether it's PG-13, whatever, what other things may be in the for the parental guide ratings. And also included with the static PSIP is your system timetable. Now, one thing I did want to kind of talk about the system timetable, because we do get calls about this occasionally, is the system timetable actually uses UTC time, the universal time code, or actually coordinated time code. And why that's kind of important to kind of address it a little bit is, so it does kind of, that's the basically kind of very similar to GMT. It's basically, everything's based off what the time is over in England. And so that's really comes in handy because when you're broadcasting, your signal may actually be picked up in more than one time zone. So you can't really put the time zone within the time which is being transmitted. So what that means is it's the receiver is where you actually add your time zone offset. So occasionally if you have a customer who's calling and saying, hey, the time's off, it's not showing the correct time on my TV, it's most likely not your PSIP. The first thing you want to do is have them check to make sure they have the proper time zone set in the receiver, and that'll usually clear up the issue. The other type of PSIP is dynamic PSIP, which is basically your channel guide information. And tables which make up that are the master guide table, and that's really the table which tells the receiver where to find all the guide information. And the guide information is made up of the event information table, and that's the table which tells you sort of the what and the when. So maybe as we were just kind of looking on the PSIP right now, it's showing right now is Judge Brown is showing. So that's kind of what the EIT, which will show you, is what's playing, the program title, and when it's playing. And then also along with that is the extended text table. And what that will give you is more detailed information about sort of that episode. Like say it was Oprah, it may tell you like who's going to be on Oprah that day. So I'll just give you more in-depth information. So that's basically what makes up your PSIP, both static and dynamic. And so Jess, why is PSIP important?
Well, Steve, you gotta have a channel guide. It's like if you have a store, you need to have a sign out front, right? So people know what you're selling. They know what they're going to get. And so what PSIP does is it brands your channel. And it's important because if you're flipping through the channels, you might be in a commercial, but everybody always wants to know what's on. Plus, viewers are very, very much used to being able to turn on a TV, thanks to cable and whatnot, and knowing what's on immediately. People want to know right away what's on the air. And you could easily catch a lot of viewers just by displaying, your PSIP correctly. So they might be flipping through the channels and they'll be able to say, oh, okay, I like this show, or they can look ahead even because it allows you to look ahead in the guide. So for instance, you can see what's coming on in an hour. So for instance, you're looking for the St. Louis Blues versus the LA Kings game. You can display that on the screen and it'll tell you when it's coming on and when it's coming up. And it can go actually all the way up to 2 weeks. So it's important to brand your channel properly. If you're going to spend all that money to put the channel on the air, you might as well brand it correctly. So PSIP is really important.
All right, great. Yeah, so that's a great use for a dynamic PSIP. Is there any uses for static PSIP?
Well, absolutely, because even a static PSIP, your short name. So like, for instance, you want people even to know if they're watching the right show. So, or rather the right channel. So, if you're let me share my screen here really quick. Where'd you go? Oops. If you want people to be able to know what channel they're looking at, and in actuality, you should have your channel branded as far as a short name, and static PSIP is also your channel number, your short name. So for instance, if your channel is your virtual channel is 26, but you might be receiving it at 13 or whatever. What
So
static
like if you're
PSIP
like a
allows you.
translator or something, yeah, you may want to.
Exactly. So for instance, in here, if you see, you'll notice I pulled in program 1. Well, when people are flipping through channels, they don't really care if it's program 1 or program 2, but I was able to rebrand our channels D2D TV and Just TV, just, for this demo purpose. So the static PSIP is really, really important. People have to know what channel you're watching, and the FCC might like to know as well. So it's a good idea to have your short name in there, and then also brand your channel to the proper virtual channel, because otherwise people are never, ever going to find you.
Right. And then yes, yeah, and it's kind of really comes into as you're talking about with translators where you're broadcasting, maybe the original is channel 12 on one side of the mountain, you have a translator broadcasting it to the other side of the mountain, and now it's channel 14. So you got to go in and modify your static PSIP to change your major number, possibly your minor number as well. Another area where that kind of comes in handy is we do a lot with SRT, where we have secure reliable transport for sending transport streams over the public internet. So we have people such as one of our customers, the Global Bible Network, where they have one location, they send the channel out to 20 different stations across the country. Well, at each station, you have to change that static PSIP to reflect what the major minor number and channel name is at that location. So static PSIP is very important as well.
Yep.
So
Yes.
okay. So we've kind of talked a little bit about static and dynamic PSIP and what the difference is and what are some of the good uses for it. Another kind of important thing to talk about with PSIP, there's many ways to kind of generate the PSIP and inject the PSIP, and we're going to talk a little about the advantages of doing the generation and injecting it within the same hardware. So what are some of the advantages of that, Jessica?
Well, back in the day, PSIP was mostly done in through the encoder. It was done, as the transport stream is getting created, which that was a great way to do it, but there's some disadvantages. Number one, you need a $40,000 encoder to do it, or, some other kind of piece of gear. Number two, if your encoder goes down, well, everything goes off the air. So the way that we do it is a little different. We actually do it inline downstream. So by doing that, it actually is very beneficial for a number of reasons. Number one is you can literally use just about any encoder, any ASI. In fact, you don't even need an encoder. If you're pulling this in from a remote location far away, all we need is the ASI or the SRT. And then we just come into our box. The box calls out, the Flex calls out to the FTP server. It pulls in the tables, and then it adds it, muxes it into the ASI that's already coming through, and then goes out to the exciter. It's simple. It's easy. It's very effective. It's very cost effective, and it works nice because you can use some more cost-effective encoders. There's nothing wrong with the real expensive ones, but the nice thing is if you're pulling a feed off of a satellite or SRT, you don't need to break it into baseband or have another very expensive piece of gear to insert the PSIP. You could just throw our box down, ASI in and out, and off it goes. So
Yeah.
there's a number of advantages. And the other advantage too, if I can point out, if for some reason you go black, your encoder dies, at least you still have the channel branding on the air. So you don't really lose your spot. Like people aren't going to scan their TV and lose you. Your PSIP's going to stay there, even if you might temporarily be off the air with your video and audio.
That's a good point, Jessica. And also, when you're kind of generating it externally, not only do you need an encoder or multiplexer to inject that stream, which adds cost to your encoder or generate multiplexer. You can't use certain encoders just don't have that feature, so you have to get more expensive encoders. It increases your price. But you also have this other external piece of equipment, which in a lot of cases is Windows based. So you have to do your Windows updates and reset it occasionally. So it's just not as robust as dedicated hardware for generating and inserting your PSIP.
That's a good point. Windows updates.
Yeah, so they,
hate to have your PSIP
everybody loves their
stop.
Windows updates.
Yeah, your PSIP stops because Windows wants to update, so you can't have that. So it's nice to have one piece of hardware that just injects it into the stream.
Right, so it really gives you a lot of reliability, reduced cost, and helps keep your station branding on the air even in the event that something was to happen to your encoder.
Yep.
So those are kind of some of the more common ways of doing PSIP and injecting PSIP. But at D2D, we also enjoy providing customers with novel solutions. They come with those with some of these crazy ideas like, how can we do this? And we really kind of like to get in there. It's like, hey, we can create this custom code for you. And we did have this situation in Mexico a few years ago, I believe, Jessica. What was the issue they were trying to solve?
Well, yeah, so they were transmitting their stations all over Mexico. And in most cases, they wanted to add some dynamic PSIP to the, to the signal. But the problem is some of the locations were on top of a mountain where there was no internet. There was no chance of internet. There was no way to get internet there. So they couldn't have any way to pull the tables down. They obviously didn't want to send a guy down there to go and load the PSIP in manually. So we figured out a way to be able to.
I think they're doing a local origination as well, weren't they, at the sites?
Yeah. Well, that's just the other thing too. Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. They wanted to be able to break the channel down and break it into baseband, add some local content, as well as add some local branding. I think they ran it through a Tektronix so they could, analyze the video, and then they wanted to re-encode it and put it back on the air. So all of that was great, except they didn't have internet access to insert the PSIP. So we came out with our Propel, which was just basically a way to send the PSIP guide tables over satellite and then be able to inject them after the fact into the stream right before the exciter without having to have an internet out there. And that way they could generate all their PSIP data at the very head end and then send it over satellite. And then at each single translator, be able to insert their PSIP. All their programming was primarily the same. So, other than the branding that they did locally, they're able to do this with, it was a great solution without having to provide internet.
Sure. Yeah, it was kind of, because one of the big issues, once we found out they're doing the local origination is normally, you'd do it over satellite, but once you kind of convert the baseband to do your local insertion and re-encode it, well, you've lost all your PSIP information from the satellite uplink. So the solution we came up with is, so we still use just one PSIP generator at the uplink, which would send it out over satellite to all the locations. And then at each location, we had one of our D2 Flex products, which has 2 ASI inputs and 2 ASI outputs. And what we would do is we would take the satellite feed in on ASI 1, and we'd strip off all the guide data and send it out the ASI output to the downstream decoder encoder so they could do all their local origination content. Then the output of their encoder we'd take into our ASI2 input, where we would then take all the EPG data we had taken off the satellite feed and now put it into the over-the-air feed, which would then go out our ASI2 output to the exciters. That way we could basically use our box to take the PSIP off the satellite feed and then inject it into the over-the-air feed. So that way they could still keep all their PSIP without having to worry about trying to somehow get internet access to these very remote sites.
Great solution. Absolutely fantastic.
Yes, so we really enjoy kind of doing those kind of special projects for different customers.
Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah, so now that we've been kind of talking a bit about PSIP, Jessica's going to do a little demo for you real quick, because it's just how easy it is to add dynamic PSIP to your station.
Yep. Give me a quick second to exit out of this huge screen. Hold on a sec.
Sure.
We're just talking before about multiple screens and how I don't do multiple screens. So so basically what I have here is let me pull this back up and we'll share the screen. No, come on. There we are. Okay, so I just have one of our Flex products here. I'm basically pulling in ASI, just a couple channels. They're just elementary streams, so they're just program 1 and program 2. I showed you this a bit earlier, but I went ahead and rebranded them just D2D TV and Just TV. And for PSIP's sake, you have to be, major and minor channel specific. So the files that are coming in that we actually went to the FTP and got kind of look like this. You don't really need to know that except for the fact that it's just basically a tab delimited Excel file. And then they come in through an FTP site every day. So, at about midnight, we go up and we grab the file and we insert it into our box here. We rebranded 26.1 and 26.2 and just basically coming ASI out of the box and for sake of the Zoom call into a transport stream analyzer. So currently right now, you'll see how we've added the tables into here. And as Steve mentioned, here's the EIT tables. Under the table, under the channel, I branded D2D TV. We've got some events here. Basically, it's event number 14. Here's a title. It's Judge Joe Brown is saying it's in English, and it goes forward like that. So basically, it's as easy as plugging in a box inline, ASI in, ASI out, as simple as taking any one of those ASI programs that you like and just you dragging it on over and renaming it. And then once you rename it, you go into the settings here, and it's as simple as adding your transport stream ID. Hopefully the FCC will give you one, automated Pcip. And then here you can see we're using our friends at TV Media and Display Systems International. And we're pulling their Pcip down here for the purpose of the demo. And that's it. That's all you really got to do. If you get hung up, you call me and we get it working for you.
Yeah, that seems very straightforward. So you just kind of put in your credentials there, set a few settings for each channel, and you're on the air with your channel guide information. And that's really exciting, Jessica.
Easy, quick, and you can do it remotely too.
Okay, so we've kind of tried to pack as much information here, and kind of everybody has a busy schedule. So we're going to open the floor now to anybody who has any questions. If you want to just go ahead and enter them into the chat box here, we can go ahead and answer those.
Let's take a look and see what we got. All right, I got one. Steve, someone asking, how much bandwidth should I allocate for I guess dynamic Pcip?
Sure, it can be vary a bit depending on how far out you want to go, because you can go anywhere from 12 hours to 2 weeks and how many channels you have. But if you're just doing kind of at a minimum just a few channels over the air, doing 12 hours, you're only talking tens of kilobits, very low bandwidth. Start going out to the full 2 weeks, you may be getting up to 100, 200 kilobits, and then at the far end, if you're a cable station, you have how many channels those cable has, you can actually get into megabits worth of data. But for typical over the air, you're talking tens of kilobits, 100 at the most in most applications.
Like a good rule of thumb is if you leave like say 150, 200K null packets in your stream, that's plenty, right?
Yeah, that would be plenty.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, for over the air. If you go, once you get the cable with so many channels, it gets more. But for over the air stations, 150 should be plenty.
Right. Yeah. Great question. Let's see what else we got. Do we have to do ASI or can they come in SRT or IP?
It can either one. It doesn't really make a difference. All we're concerned about, once you get the transport stream, what other mode it comes in, ASIP, we inject the tables, and then it can go out ASRIP. So it really, the piece of itself is agnostic to whether it's ASI or IP.
So the cool thing about us is you could be at your station in Birmingham and SRT your signal all the way out to Seattle. Now, Seattle obviously is going to be a different time zone, probably different programming. You could just SRT and then add a box in Seattle, and that would change all your programming, including your static and your dynamic Pcip.
Correct. Yes, we can do that.
Yeah,
once we receive the signal, we can do all the modifying to it as needed. before it's sent on to the transmitter or wherever downstream it needs to go.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. Let's see if we got anything else. What vendors do you support for automatic PSIP?
Yes, we currently support 3 vendors for automated PSIP. We support Titan TV, Display Systems International, and Grace Note. So if you are partnered with any of those vendors, all you got to do is go into our user interface, enter your credentials, and we'll start pulling that schedule.
Great. So 3 vendors. Another one just popped in on top of that question. Can I do my own?
Sure, we actually do have the ability where you can do manual PSIP. It can be a little laborious because it's basically it's a spreadsheet. If you do have a station which really doesn't change a whole lot from week to week, it's not too bad because you have sort of 2 options you can do it. For each event, you can either put a day, month, year for when it's going to occur, or you can put a day of the week index. For example, Sunday would be 0, Monday would be 1. So if your schedule doesn't really change from week to week, you could create just one weekly schedule and just keep repeating it over and over. So but if you do have a schedule which varies quite a bit, yeah, it's really nice to have an automated system, so you don't have to be constantly updating those Excel sheets all the time.
So what about ProTrack? You familiar with ProTrack?
I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with ProTrack, but that's one we'll definitely look into after this. We'll see if we can get in touch with them and see if we can get them to start supporting us as well, or supporting them.
As long as it's basically in like a tab delimited Excel file, right? It's a text file, right, but it's created in Excel and then you just save it as tab delimited. It's pretty much, that's it, right? So ProTrack should
so
work.
we did there's actually a standard for doing it, which is, it's very complicated with all these XML files and you have to have a bunch of different files. And for just basic over-the-air schedules like this, it's just crazy complex. It's like, you don't really need all this. So we actually have our own kind of protocol we came up with, just a very simple tab delimited text file. And we've, just partnered with the different major providers, and they've been willing to, because it's so straightforward, that's very easy for them to put their schedule in that format, and then we just pull it down and inject it into the stream.
Yeah, I think ProTrack does a lot of like traffic, like they do primarily traffic and scheduling software. So it might be a little bit different, but definitely worth looking into. That's a great question.
Sure, we'll definitely once we get the call, do a little research on them, try and contact them, see if there's something we can work out there to support them.
It's the first time I've heard that ProTrack. I'm familiar with it from a previous life. And it was primarily, I think it was a lot of like commercial and scheduling software, but it would be great if it could pull in the show somehow and work with that. Is PSIP a requirement? Does the FCC make you do it?
It kind of depends on what type of station you are. If you're a primary, a full power station, it is definitely required, at least for the first 12 hours. So you always have to have 12 hours ahead, and it's only the EITs which are required. The ETTs are optional. I believe that's the same for Class A as well. I'm not sure, but and then for low power, it's not required at all. You don't have to do any PSIP, but we highly recommend that you do, because it really adds a lot of value to your channel for people to be able to find you, and then kind of their channel surfing and go, hey, I want to watch this show, instead of saying, I don't know what this is, and just pass on by.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, if you're going to spend all that money, you might as well just put a couple more in and be able to put a sign out front, right? That's basically, it's basically what it is. We mentioned SRT. Will it work with multicast?
Yes. Yeah, that kind of say it doesn't really, how the transport stream gets in and out of the box really doesn't make a difference as far as doing, putting the PSIP on there.
We don't care.
Or it's kind of, okay. We don't really care how it gets in and out. We just, once we have it, we put the PSIP in and send it back out. Either way, you can go out ASI or IP, or both if you want, depending on your application.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like you come in some channels with IP, some channels with ASI, some other channels with SRT, mux them all together, and then build PSIP just for that particular bouquet. So that was a great question. Let's see. Anyone else looking?
Let's see this one.
What's the difference between PSIP and EPG?
It's kind of, well, it's somewhat kind of intertwined. It's kind of the Pcip. It's kind of made up. I was kind of talking earlier about the two different types of Pcip. It's kind of so EPG is really more is the dynamic type of Pcip, which your EITs and ETTs is the dynamic part of Pcip, and then the static part of Pcip is your channel name, channel number, those tables.
So I guess if we break them down into the acronym, EPG is Electronic Program Guide, and PSIP is Program System and Information Protocol. So right. PSIP is a protocol for the EPG, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, so it's almost like an umbrella. Like so overall, it's all called PSIP, but then within PSIP, there's your static PSIP and your dynamic PSIP, and the EPG is specifically the dynamic PSIP.
Right. Okay.
Your electronic program guide.
Okay, that makes sense. Good question. Anybody else? Bueller?
Let's see if there any more that we had on here. See if I give another minute. See if anybody else has anything else to ask.
Yeah, if not, while we're waiting, you know, if you want to set up a meeting or a demo, by all means, you clearly have our website address. Our contacts are in there. Feel free to give me a ring or Steve, and we'll be happy to give you a live demo or send you out a box and, you know, get you started by all means.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I don't see any more questions coming in. I apologize if I missed any, but yes, we are definitely available for any questions. Yeah. So today, you know, we're happy to have you join us. You learned about the difference between static and dynamic PSIP, some of the advantages of using the same hardware to both generate and inject dynamic PSIP, and some novel ways to do PSIP. We also had a short demo so you can see just how easy it is to set up PSIP at your station. So hope everyone's able to learn something today, and please contact us if you have any more questions or would like to receive a demo unit to try out, and have a great day.
Piece of cake. Thanks, guys.